After a pretty good amount of bloviating about releasing a long-awaited plan about abortion that would appeal to everyone, the disgraced ex-president put out a pretty gruesome video today, ostensibly revealing how he would deal with abortion if he were elected to a second term as president. In the video, Trump says that it is his view that what states decide should be the law of the land, but it is more important to listen to what he does not say or clarify. He does not address what he would do as president if a national abortion ban were sent to his desk for a signature. He does not address the growing movement for fetal personhood, which endangers right now as we sit here and continues to endanger IVF access in Alabama and could be used to ban other fertility treatments, as well as birth control. His views on the state bills that, if passed, would charge a woman with murder for having abortion or receiving abortion health care. And he does not address the fact that key advisors to his own campaign come from Christian nationalist groups that have released detailed plans for how Trump could ban abortion nationwide without any input at all from Congress or any state legislature. And here's what his statement does say. It says that states like Idaho, that are fighting all the way to the Supreme Court to deny abortions to women in medical crises, that they should be allowed to continue to deny stabilizing health care. It says that a raped 10-year-old girl should continue to have to be forced to leave her state to receive abortion health care if they're able to leave at all. And it says that states can continue to deny abortions to women like Kate Cox and Amanda Zarowski, whose babies did not survive and who themselves have risked permanent damage to their own health and fertility if they are denied care. In response to Trump's statement, the Biden presidential campaign released an ad featuring Amanda, showing the damage Trump has already done to her in one term. Watch.
This is one of our willow boxes. This is just filled with some of the things that we had started gathering for her while I was pregnant.
Yep.
There's her little baby book. This is the outfit that she was gonna maybe wear home from the hospital. All of these. And these are her little footprints.
It's okay.
This is who we are right now. Joining our conversation, the president of Reproductive Freedom for All, Mini Timuraju, with me at the table, host of the Fast Politics podcast and special correspondent for Vanity Fair, Molly Jong-Fast. I mean, I have talked to Amanda maybe a half dozen times, and her story and her willingness to share what has to be the saddest chapter of her life so far just flattens me every time. And I guess the point, Minnie, is there is no response, because this isn't about the old contours. The old fight is over, and it has been taken over by people like Amanda, and they're going to decide where this conversation heads and what people decide. And it feels like Trump, you know, we sometimes build him up as being this political genius when he's sort of an accidental autocrat. I think that most people watching that will have one reaction, and that's to understand that this was a baby. Amanda and her husband, Willow, was her daughter. She desperately wanted her, but she almost died because of Donald Trump's appointments to the Supreme Court and the inability to receive health care.
That's exactly right. I think just watching the Trump statement and juxtaposing it with Amanda and the Biden ad, which was incredibly powerful, yet again, you know, kudos to the team for really zeroing in. The message is Donald Trump did this. Donald Trump did this. We cannot repeat it enough. We cannot replay his own words enough. We cannot outline the dystopian meltdown of this country for women and families without pitting it to Donald Trump. It's all because of Donald Trump. But if you go back to his video today, the thing that I thought was some of the things that I thought were the most striking were he really aggressively brags again, states again that he's proud of overturning Roe, clip that, push that. That's the real message from the video today. Everything else almost doesn't matter. But the secondary thing was how dangerous the disinformation and misinformation he's pushing about Democrats and their position on pregnancy and abortion later in pregnancy, which if you look at Amanda's ad, that's it. He's basically pushing a lie about where Democrats stand on a pregnancy, abortion later in term, abortion later in pregnancy, which would put someone like Amanda Zarowski, her entire life, at jeopardy. It's audacious. It's dangerous. We need to make sure American people, and I ask listeners at home to understand, people who, like Amanda, they don't set out to be pregnant with an intent to have an abortion. These are pregnancies that are very much wanted. When we take these decisions away from pregnant people and their physicians and their families and put it in the hands of reckless politicians like Donald Trump, women die. And that's the top message from today and from the ad and the video. Women die. We cannot let this continue to happen.
And we should say that Amanda's fertility is a question. She's working through it right now. We made the editorial decision not to show Trump's video, but I described it as gruesome. What is gruesome is what Minnie's talking about. He describes, he lies about the Democratic position as saying that Democrats are for abortions after 9 months,
right,
which isn't a thing ever, anywhere.
No, look, the top line of this video is Donald Trump is scared. He knows Republicans are losing on choice.
He said it. He said it after 2022.
Right. And that's why he made this video, is because he is worried. And you'll remember, this is a guy who said to Chris Matthews during a town hall that there should be some kind of punishment for women who have abortions. So it's important to realize that it doesn't even matter what he believes. He installed 3 justices, all of whom he said were going to overturn Roe. This is what he did. It's like, Donald Trump, you can't believe what he says. Just believe what he's done. Mm-hmm. But more importantly, the Heritage Foundation, which is basically the quote-unquote think tank, though we should use quotes for that, of Trumpism, has been working on regulating IVF and banning abortion. So they have a plan.
And birth control.
And birth control. And they have a plan. And if you look at the Supreme Court right now, they have 2 abortion cases, one of which is probably, during the oral arguments, we heard Alito and Thomas talk about the Comstock Act from the 1870s and how they were going to use that and how common it was. By the way, it's not common at all, but they were going to use it to ban abortion pills. So, of course, they're looking at a federal ban. This is totally a lie. But I do think it's worth realizing that Donald Trump is doing this because he knows he's losing on it.
Hey, everyone. MSNBC has a new and improved app. You'll get real-time alerts and analysis, live blogs, in-depth essays, video highlights, and the best 2024 election coverage. Download the new MSNBC app. Here's how to do it. You tap on the App Store on your phone. You hit search on the bottom right corner. You type in MSNBC. You click on the MSNBC app. You click on Get or the cloud icon and enjoy it.